Afterlife Chronicles for Abaddon Books. I'm going to pronounce it right. I've been trusting it for 3 years, but Abaddon Books. When they first came to be, like 5 years ago, I was sent the Bible and they said, pitch me something. We want you to try and do that. I pitched them something I thought was a damn good idea. And they didn't take it because my idea, they said, was too close to everyone else's. But I still want to do it. I mean, post-apocalyptic fiction, that's Mad Max, right? I want to do that. So 2 years later, I was at the Book Expo of America. I met John Oliver, who was the editor there, as well as Solaris folks now. And you know, meeting the editors face to face really helps because it's harder for them to say no to you after that because they actually know who you are. And he said, I asked him about Afterlife. He said, you know, we're good right now, but have you ever thought of writing a zombie novel? And that's where Empire Assault came. He said, well, pitch a zombie novel, and if I like it, I'll buy the idea from it. Well, okay, well, then I wrote Empire Assault. Well, when I was in Brighton for the World War there, Empire Assault came out, and I kind of pitched him an idea for Afterlife. He said, okay, I think we're ready for a new title. You know, do you want to be the first American to write a series? I said, absolutely. So I had an image in my mind, and this is where he starts calling me weird, of a monkey that's surgically attached to somebody's back, but not like facing forward, facing the other direction. And because this series is about blood, what happens is your blood is transfused through the monkey's blood and then becomes something else. Okay? So, and it's called monkey backing. And when people read it, everybody fucking shocked at what monkey backing is. And in the book itself, you want monkey backing. Even if it might happen to your brother, your cousin, your sister, your mother, it's because the corpers, the Japanese, have found something special in your blood, and you might get that much closer to curing this disease that's affecting everybody. Well, the disease is Minamata disease, which is a disease that anybody gets if they keep fishing in the same water over and over again. It's incurable, but they don't know that. They think that it's to cure the disease. What it's really for is that they can transfuse your Asian blood and sell it to the white guys, because the O-negative plague killed off 93% of all white people, leaving 40% of all Native Americans and 30% of all Japanese or Asians alive. Okay? And this takes place on a floating city off the coast of California. So the Japanese are on top, all the other Asian groups are on the bottom. I'm going to read a chapter about midway through. It has a lot of action, where two of the main characters are about to, they want to try and enter the corporate ship so that they can try and find evidence of something, okay? The characters are Kavika, who is one of the Poly Boys. Poly Boys are a group of young Hawaiian men who keep their warrior spirit alive, the Hawaiian warrior spirit alive, by doing intense, dangerous stunts all day long, like it's just silly money. They're called the Poly Boys because if anyone's been, y'all been to Hawaii, they have up the Poly Highway is Poly Point. And there's a legend that King Kamehameha, when he was fighting off Maui and his forces, they actually were able to leap up into the wind off of Poly Point, and then the wind would drive them back, and that wind was the breath of Pele, and Pele was taking care of them. So they believe that Pele will always take care of them, and they can jump into the face of a hurricane. It's perfectly fine. The other character is Spike. Spike is actually a transsexual Filipino. Her name is Leilani, but she prefers to go around as a guy, and she always says, "Come, Spike," and you do because she's badass. Okay. So here we go. Waiting until nightfall was one of the hardest things Kavika had ever done. It was too much time. Fear fingered its way through the plan to pinpoint every flaw and chance for failure. The more Kavika had to wait and listen to his own second thoughts, the more he began to believe them. Their initial plan had been pretty simple. Donnie Wu would create a diversion near one of the fountains. While the boxers responded, the corporate attention was drawn away. Spike and Kavika would enter surreptitiously through an access hatch where the screws had been loosened. Used for maintenance when the ship was still a pleasure palace for the rich and famous, the hatch was now used by scientists to gain direct access to the water for testing. Dressed in black shark skin, he and Spike hugged the deck of a nearby ship. The unaffiliated occupants had been ushered below and were too afraid to even ask for something in trade for their discomfort, like Kavika and Spikeport skull caps. Both Kavika and Spikeport skull caps made from the reclaimed rubber tubing. They had the same material on their feet, thicker pieces of rubber for traction. The only parts open to air were their faces and hands. Each of them carried a knife at the waist in a sharkskin sheath. Both of them also had back holsters, holding 2 rattan and Escriva sticks. They were as ready as they'd ever be. Of course, they almost hadn't gotten Donnie to help. He needed convincing. Tell me again why you want to go aboard the Freedom Ship? Akamu's hackers are there. We need to find them. And then, you think they'll automatically cooperate? They'll see this badass ex-poly boy and lay down their weapons and beg you not to hurt them? No, I don't think you get it. I don't think you get it at all. But it won't be as hard as all that. The real people have connections. The real people are our group of white folks who call themselves the real people. And the Asians don't kind of see through that. And that's supposed to be a good thing. They know exactly where those boxers live. And the pair of you think it's going to be easier to go into the lion's den than to wait outside of it. We don't think anything of the sort, protested Spike. We know this is near suicide, but what choice have we got? You saw what the poly boys did to Kavika. What's to stop them from doing it again? They won't touch him as long as he stays out of the sky. You don't know that. You can't prove that. The only way we'll get this over with is to find the boxer that killed Akamu. And when they catch you, Spike smelled. They're catching us. There's catching us, and then there's catching us. So you do have a plan. Poly boys on the sky, water dogs on the sea, and until someone stops them, boxers on the decks. I'll buy that. We can't make them go to the sky, but we can get them in the sea. And if they're in the water, then they become the property of the water dogs. They can be killed or ransomed, whatever's easier and more profitable. And then there's nothing they can do. I have a feeling that there's always something that they'll be able to do, but I get it. I was just worried that you two were going to go off half-cocked thinking you could infiltrate the Freedom Ship like a pair of plague ninjas to find the one box you need among Pele knows how many there are in there. How many there are in there, which was a question that Kavika was soon going to find out. Ever since he was a child staring at the Freedom Ship, he and the others had daydreamed about the Japs who lived aboard. It looked so fresh and clean, all smooth lines, fade-proof white hull. It was like a heaven they could never attain. Ivanov had told them about the old Greek gods and how they lived on Mount Olympus. The Freedom Ship in all of its glory was like that. Those who lived aboard were gods. The people of the sky dreamed of the extravagances to be found aboard it. Showers, movie theaters, running water, electricity to spare, spreads of food fit for kings, plush carpets and fabric, cool metal, soft beds. All these and more had become a mantra for generations of children growing up. On occasion, a beautiful woman of the city would disappear. Children would sometimes go missing. All these were blamed on the residents of the Freedom Ship. Most hoped that they'd been taken as a reward for something, but others, like Spike, scoffed at the idea that they'd been selected or had risen to the Freedom Ship, as people were known to say, delivering the pronouncement in soft, off-field whispers. More like gang rape by a bunch of horny-ass Japs, Spike once said. They're no different than we are. They're just rich folk, we're poor folk. It doesn't make them gods. Gods or not, Kavika was eager to see inside. He heard the shrill whistle from the other side of the Freedom Ship. Donnie Wu was doing his thing. He and Spike slipped over the edge of the rail into the water where a pair of water dogs were waiting. The water dogs grabbed them with their oversized flippers, quickly propelled them across the lagoon to the ship. They found the lip of the access panel, pulled it slightly to the left, and then used a knife to free the 3 hasps on the inside. There used to be a rubber seal around the door, but that had long ago rotted away. It took maybe 30 seconds, and the door was slowly opened. Kavika and Spike stared wide-eyed into the darkness. No one was waiting for them, a good start. Spike entered first, and Kavika pulled himself up after her. They stood for a moment, attempting to acclimatize themselves to the pitch-black interior of the access tunnel. As they did, the last of the water fell away from the shark skin. Finally, it was Kavika who whispered, "I see a light. Let's go." Kavika squeezed past Spike towards an almost imperceptible dim strip of light. As he moved one slow step after another, he heard Spike close the hatch behind him. Kavika reached the interior hatch, placed his ear to it, but heard nothing except the thumping of his heart. Now all he had to do was open the door and hope for the best. For all he knew, it might lead them into a latrine or the main dining hall. The thought made him wish that Spike hadn't closed the hatch behind them. They opened the door, but found themselves in the closet. Except for several empty boxes, it was empty. They were as yet undetected, but they still had 4 floors to travel and an unknown amount of people to get past. The hallway was deserted, not at all what they expected. The Freedom Ship was universally thought of as this, by citizens of the floating city, as a palace, a place with clear air, sharp corners, white walls, and the antiseptic cleanliness of storybook royalty. Where everyone else lived in the ghetto, this was a shining beacon of civilization, just like the one he'd heard spoken about in the Bible. But the Freedom Ship was nothing like that. In reality, it smelled terrible, with a distinct hint of feces. The floor was far dirtier than even the most slovenly third-rate will allow. The walls had a coat of grime like the lower holds of some of the older unaffiliated ships, the ones without third mates at all. Kavik and Spike glanced at each other. This was definitely not what they expected. The hallway ran almost the length of the ship. It dead-ended at the engine compartment, which took up 3 levels of the rearmost section. But they wouldn't be going there. They had to get to the staircase in the middle of the ship. Once there, the plan was to travel directly to the floor they needed and find the boxes they'd come to get. They separated as they moved down the hallway. Kavika pressed his back against one wall, Spike the other, and as a pair they skulked down the hallway towards the center of the ship. They passed several sets of doors before they came to an open one on Kavika's side. He gestured for Spike to edge forward so she could see into the room, but she did, moving inch by inch, leaning slightly forward to see it. Then she straightened and gave him a nod. He approached the room and peered around the corner and found it empty. The only things inside were ropes and odd metal objects hanging from the wall, tools of some sort, but he didn't know what they were for. They walked on. By Kavika's count, they had 30 more doors to pass before they reached the first set of emergency stairs. At the next door, they heard shuffling from the side. A pungent smell surrounded the opening. They tried to peer in, but all they saw was an empty floor. The walls of the next room had been removed. They exchanged looks with each other, but were unwilling to stick their heads into the room without knowing what was going on. But the next room was the same way, as was the next. A whole series of rooms along the left-hand side had been converted into something. They might never have found out what it was had they not heard voices emanating from farther down the hall, and ducked into one of the open doors. They plastered themselves on either side of the opening, facing into the room. What they saw so shocked them that they stood there staring, even as a pair of boxers walked past their door, talking jocularly about something or other in Chinese. Boxers, by the way, aren't dogs. They're the nicknames for the Chinese because they were the tonsors and the whole thing from like the rebellion. So. Only when the voices had been silenced by the close of the door down the hallway did either of them say something. What the hell is that? Spike asked. I think it's a cow, Kavika said, but I'm not sure. The cow stood in the middle of the room amidst a mound of dried plankton and seaweed. It was black and white, just like the pictures Kavika had seen in books. In fact, it looked just like the cows from the pictures, except that this creature had been attached to some sort of machine. A metal cone was affixed to its mouth at the end of a metal hose running from the ceiling above. The metal cone was also affixed to its rear, connected to a metal hose running to the floor. The strangest of all was what appeared to be a set of metal fingers that reached under the stomach and was affixed to appendages there. These metal fingers pulsed in alternating beats, causing the metal hose to which they were attached to leap and shudder as if something was inside. What the fuck are they doing to it? Spike asked. I don't know. I just can't get over it. Kavika turned his head and realized that there wasn't just one cow. There were dozens, all lined up along the outside wall. The reason they hadn't seen them earlier was because they were centered on the walls of the rooms. Each had the same hoses attached to them, running in the ceiling and into the floors. Cows? They have cows in this ship? Kavika brought his hand up and rubbed his face. He was just plain amazed at the sight. He'd heard about these creatures. Donnie Muda had told him that about entire businesses that sold nothing but beef to people driving by in cars. Cows had some cult following in America and had been the primary source of food, but that was on land. Not only was their presence strange, but it was damn insulting. That the corpers had been aboard the ship, especially when there were ships where folks were starving, was an extravagance that seemed imperiously wrong. Then he heard a sound that absolutely terrified him. Halfway between a whistle and a cry, it came from all the way at the other end of the immense rectangular room, and soon it was joined by others just like it. The noise was becoming more insistent, and soon the large room was filled with their bleeding. Kavika and Spike drew their sticks from their backs and advanced carefully along the wall. When they reached the doorway, they hurried quickly past. But they were otherwise unimpeded in their journey to the source. They passed a dozen doors before they saw what appeared to be a small pen, holding smaller versions of the cows. These had yet to be assaulted by the metal hoses and were staring hungrily at Kavika and Spike as they came into view. The two glanced at each other and stared wide-eyed at the incomprehensible sight. Finally, they just shook their heads. It was too much. Nothing had prepared them for this sort of thing. Far out, here. They checked left and right and moved out of the room, leaving the cries of the calves behind them. At length, they reached the stairs, which were covered with threadbare red material that muffled the sound of their feet. Spike went first, moving to crouch. She held one stick in front of her, the other one trailing behind her. Kavika came after, moving the same way, his ears pricked for any sound. They came to the landing on the next floor, the hallway running parallel to the one below. They didn't know what was on that floor, but they didn't need to. They had to go up. The real people had told them exactly where to go. Everything else was just getting in the way. They were moving to the next level when they heard voices coming towards them. Ran back to the second level and found an unlocked door. They dashed inside, closed the door, and put their backs against it. The room was someone's living space. 5 times larger than a cargo container, boasted more couches and chairs than any 2 Hawaiian families owned. To the left of the door was a kitchen area. A tall cabinet gave out a humming noise. Oh, dear God, Spike wondered. It's a refrigerator. She opened the door and stuck her head inside. Kavika heard her hollow giggle. He came up behind her and they basked in the chilled air blasted from the open doors. Jars and containers rested on several shelves, an apple and 3 bright yellow onions set on the bottom shelf. One of the jars was filled with white liquid, the other was filled with what looked like water. Spike picked up one of the onions and inhaled deeply. She grinned in satisfaction, then she grabbed the other 2. She tried to stuff them in her soup, but it was almost skin tight. She held them out to Kavika. Can you carry these for me? I think so. But Kavika, do you know what I can do with these and some fish? He couldn't help but laugh. When she'd been born a boy was impossible. That she'd been born a boy was impossible to tell him. To him, at least, she seemed girl enough through and through. We can't, Spike. Look, if you must, we can carry them. We can carry them there and there, he pointed to her chest. She actually looked at them as if considering it for a moment. I was just joking, he said. Yeah, okay. She went, never mind. Kavika chuckled softly. She grabbed the jar filled with clear liquid and opened it. A quick sniff and the taste told him it was water. He took a deep drink of the cold liquid. It was the best tasting water he'd ever had. He held some out to Spike. At first she took a sip and soon gulping it down. Together they finished the water and put the empty jar back in the refrigerator. They didn't go any farther into the room to check out the sleeping area or the closet. Instead, they returned to the door. There they noticed a peephole that allowed them to look into the hall. Kavika checked and found it empty. They stepped back into the hall and headed up the stairs. They made it halfway to the next level before they happened upon a man lighting a cigarette. He looked at them at the same time they saw him. Spike attacked with her sticks, catching him in the head, throat, and again the head. He fell hard and stared stunned, his eyes unfocused but still open, until Spike kicked him in the face, sending him to the place of happy Japanese dreams. Kavika stepped forward and stubbed out the fresh of the cigarette. This was their first encounter. Frankly, he'd expected more. The ship was easily the size of at least half the other ships in the floating city. It should have been able to hold thousands, but so far he'd only heard or seen a few. Sure, they'd only been in a small fraction of the space so far, but there still should have been more. Spike beckoned for him to follow. They hit the next level and knew that they were in trouble right away, when they saw dozens of porters wearing dark suits and white shirts. Some of the nearest stopped what they were doing and gaped at them, while farther down, men and women came and went, busy at some task. Kavika glanced at the stairs towards the 4th level and saw a group of boxers descending. He had no choice. He grabbed Spike, turned right, and sprinted down the hall. An alarm went up behind them. People screamed after them in Japanese, and a klaxon sounded. But all these noises were drowned out by the sound of the roar they heard in front of them. They skidded to a stop as an immense space opened before them on the left, opening into an auditorium with stadium seating. On the floor-to-ceiling wall-to-wall screen was an immense lizard creature attacking a city filled with skyscrapers. Fire leaped out of his mouth as it screamed again. Kavika! He dropped into a crouch, both sticks at the ready. Spike had already engaged the first boxer who got up and then taking out his knees. Kavika stomped on the back of the man's neck and attacked the boxer coming up behind him. He twisted a reverse punch with the short end of the sticks into the opponent's sternum. It's called a punch. The boxer's face blanched white as he fell to his knees. Then they were in the thick of it. The boxers didn't have any weapons, which even the odds. Although they were outnumbered, Kavika and Spike held a scream of sticks, and they knew how to use them. Kavika was kicked and punched several times in the face, but he gave better than he got, his sticks dancing in a fandango blur. Soon there was a gap in their opponent's defenses as one fell unconscious. Both he and Spike saw it at the same time. They reversed their run back the way they'd come and burst through, running pell-mell towards the stairs. They took the stairs 2 at a time until they ran into more opponents. Kavika had been wondering where everyone was. Now they clearly found them. It took them about a minute of battering the boxer's feet and ankles before they made the 4th level. At one point, they managed to tackle Spike and hold her down, one sitting on her back, the other twisting her neck. Kavika managed to wrap one of the sticks around the side of the first guy's head and snap his neck, while the other froze to the side. Kavika did the same thing. Although he and Spike made it to the top, they didn't arrive unscathed. They turned left into a narrow passage. The left wall was made of glass, beads with moisture on the inside, a greenhouse complete with plants, trees, and grasses. To the right was a room filled with 6 vats of cycling red liquid. They limped past them and hit their targets. Their target room at a run. Spike was battered and bleeding, but she kept right behind him. Dark shades exploded from the beds, leaping to intercept them, but where the occupants were groggy, Kavika and Spike rode the leading edge of violence. They whipped their escrima sticks in a modified Heaven 6, blocking with broad edge and striking with hard knob ends. Back to back, they were unstoppable, but they were a machine of whirling pain, until a pair of dark figures took out their legs. Kavika felt smothered for a moment. His body surged over him, grabbing, slapping, and punching. He kicked out and brought his arms across the bare skin of his opponent's. Shark skin was as smooth as glass when it felt one way, like 1,000 tiny razor blades the other way. This was what he pulled across their flesh. They screamed, and with their cries came his own roars of outrage and fear and unspent energy. For a moment, he was free. Shouting came from outside the room, feet pounded along the hall. He and Spike only had a moment. He stood as the lights came on and revealed a scene of chaos and murder. 2 boxers lay dead, one strangled with Spike's legs still locked around his neck. Someone grabbed Kavika from behind. He raised his arms and spun, trapping the hand and reached for his shoulder. And there, as if a gift from Pele herself, was a boxer whose image had been captured on a Kabu's media stick. Kavika shouted, "Come on!" Spike released the dead man and fought her way to her feet. Kavika pushed the boxer hard and felt him lose balance. Kavika kept up the pressure, angling him towards the window. He screamed as if the sound could add fuel to his momentum. Face to face, the boxer's eyes were wide with shock. "Behind you!" screamed Spike. Kavika felt a blow, but did nothing to slow him. The boxer hit the window at full speed, and it exploded outwards. As Kavika was pulled through with the falling man, he realized a Spike had grabbed onto his back. Together, the 3 of them fell 4 stories into the lagoon. When he hit, all the air left him. He sank deep as he somersaulted into the water. Once he slowed, he wanted nothing more than to breathe, but he didn't know which way was up and which way was down. The water was darker than any night, devoid of light, and the light of the stars. Just when he thought his chest was going to explode, Kavika felt hands grasp it. Then movement as he was drawn back to the surface. He surged into the night, sucking the cold air in with great gulps. Eyes open, he saw everything with bleak of an eye. Boxers leaning out the broken window high above. Spike surging free just as he was. Water dogs all around them, just as planned. Donnie Lou hanging from the rigging of a nearby ship, a torch in his hand. The boxer floated face up in the water a few feet away. Kavika sank back into the water with the feeling only one has when, at the end of the day, when everything has gone to plan. Now to give the boxer back to Ivanov, where he could be interrogated. No one would mess with the submarine. The old Russian had hinted on being able to make anyone talk. But when Kavika next surfaced, all wasn't as he had thought. 20 windows had opened at the base of the Freedom ship. Divers with flippers like the water dogs dove into the water. The water dogs around him backed away. They weren't prepared for a fight. Kavika grabbed the boxer and yelled for help. 2 water dogs returned for him, but just as they reached to grasp out his hand, a great weight fell upon Kavika. He sank down and down and down as something pressed all around him. The boxer was still unconscious, his face inches from Kavika's. Then their descent was halted, and Kavika found himself violently jerked free of the water and flung into the sky. A net. Connected to a crane atop the Freedom ship, the cable descended to the net and now held them and the boxer. Spike was nowhere to be seen. Kavika tried to see below, but all he was able to catch was a furious fight in the waters that roiled and foamed with water dogs and boxers. Then before he was pulled back into the ship, he saw the torch waving above Donnie Lou's head. Knowing that his old friend was there was a small speck of hope, dropped into a glowing chasm of dread. Hands grasped the net. Hands reached to grab the net, and it was soon pulled into a high platform. The net dropped to the hard surface, making him shout in pain as his knee was wrenched by his own weight. They pulled the net off him, and while one man held a knife to his jugular, stripped Kavika, he was stripped of the shark skin. When he was naked, they threw him to the floor. Chest heaved, eyes flashed, angry mouths spat curses. He could see the boxers' collective outrage at their stance, outrage that had disgraced Hollywood, had dared breach their sanctum. Kavika knew that pain was coming. He knew that he was going to be hurt terribly, and for one brief moment, he didn't even care. Then he saw Spike as they carried her past him. They'd removed her shark skin as well, revealing her for what she really was. He would like to catch her eye, but she was unconscious, a lump forming at the side of her face. A minute passed, maybe more, as he listened to the Chinese talk amongst themselves. mingled with his own thundering heartbeat. Then a figure hovered to his target, the boxer. He rubbed his head, then replied to something said by one of the others. He stood imperiously above Kavika for a moment, looking down at her before calling for something. There was a flurry of movement. Two men grabbed Kavika's wrists and ankles and held him firm. The boxer knelt between Kavika's legs, pressed his knee painfully into his crotch. His other foot rested beside Kavika's hip. As the boxer leaned over Kavika, his plate draped along the left side of Kavika's face. Fang. The boxer said softly. What? I am Fang. What? Fang. Yes, I want you to know me. His English was fluid, with only a hint of Chinese. I want you to know who it is that blood raped you. The words sunk in like a stake through Kavika's heart. He surged against his restraining hands. He tried to kick out, but felt something sit on his knees. The boxer pressed harder with his knee. He turned his face as if he were staring at a strange little bug. How do you think you were to come to my home? Another face moved into view above the boxer's shoulder. This one had a rounder face and was hairless. He wore glasses. His short black hair was combed back. He held out a mechanism for Fang. When he spoke, he was Japanese. Kavika realized he was seeing Portland. All he could see of the man was the upper part of the torso. He wore a dark suit with a white shirt and tie and showed no emotion. Once he handed the device to Fang, he backed out of Kavika's vision and was gone. Then Kavika's attention switched to the device, made of metal and elastic, the only thing he could focus on were the 9 needles protruding from its center. Kavika felt a scream coming from a million miles away. It rushed in at light speed as the device descended, and only when his chest was pierced did it burst free. A scream of agony and anguish that came from a place in his soul that would never be the same again. Another scream came, but this one was from somewhere else, and peeled away as his voice cracked in silence. The last thing he saw was Fang's grin, white behind the Fu Manchu mustache. The last thing he heard was a chuckle. Then, nothing.
Right.